Guitar intervals, C major, A minor, and related modes, this time focusing in on C major located on the top string, part number 1. Remember that one of our major objectives here is to try to get all of our resources orientated in the same direction to make them as easy on the eyes as possible from the perspective of a player of the guitar. The player of the guitar, of course, located behind the guitar. Therefore, when you look at my guitar, we're going to flip it around so it looks like I'm left-handed, but it will then be mirroring what you see from your perspective from behind the guitar. And when we are behind our guitar, we typically have the low or heavy string on top, the one closest to the ceiling, information then going from left to right towards the base or body of the guitar. Similarly, with our Excel worksheet, where this is going to be our worksheet, this top row here is going to be representing the low or heavy string, and it's going to be orientated top to bottom, left to right in the same orientation as our perspective from behind the guitar in an attempt to not have to flip things around as we go from the worksheet to my guitar to your guitar and so on, and make it easier on the eyes so we can spend all of our time focusing on what we're trying to learn, which is difficult enough, in this case that being the intervals. So we're going to be looking at the intervals for, in this case, the key of C major. A couple things that we want to keep in mind with the intervals is that you'd like to know all the intervals kind of in order because there's 12 notes and we're looking at the intervals, which are like the distance between those notes. And we also have to learn the naming conventions of the intervals, which sometimes don't include the actual distance in terms of half steps, which I would like to know the distance in half steps, because that'll help me to count through the intervals. So if you don't know all of that stuff, that's kind of stuff that we'll pick up as we go through an exercise like this, and it'll hopefully become more of a routine type of thing. The other problem with intervals is we sometimes try to learn them in a similar way as counting, or say learning the alphabet. If you learn the alphabet, we might just say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on and so forth, which means that we only learn them in order. So if I try to count it backwards, or if I try to say, you know, what's the relationship between B and G or something like that, that becomes difficult because my only way to do that is to count from A to G, right? So we want to basically learn it in a way that's going to be conducive to using it. And one of the ways we use it is we build scales. So we're going to be looking at, we can call it the C major scale and all of the related modes. So that means C major, D Dorian, E Phrygian, F Lydian, G Mixolydian, A minor, and then the Locrian. We're not going to spend a lot of time on, but the B Locrian. So this is going to be the shape that we will look at. And if you're familiar with, you might call it like shape number 1. For example, if it was a pentatonic shape, it would look like this. From here, doon, doon, top to bottom of the guitar. Pentatonic shape would look like this. Right. If I just play it through from A to A in an A minor shape, boom, 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 boom. And then if we add the 2 other notes to make it a 7-note shape, then we got the whole scale, which looks like this. Doot, 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 doot. Now, so that's going to be the shape that we might have familiarity with. This is possibly one of the first, at least major shapes that people understand. And oftentimes people learn it from what they would think of as the 5th fret, because that's right in the middle of the guitar, which means that if you play it from top to bottom or top from A to A, you're basically playing a minor, an A minor, because you started and stopped on A. If you start that same shape from a C, then we're playing from C to C, and you would be playing the related mode, which would be the Ionian mode, which we call the major scale, basically, right? That's going to be the idea. So what I would like to do is learn my intervals as they relate to this shape, and that will reinforce the shape, and it'll also help me to learn the intervals, and then I can learn and it'll also help me to learn the intervals that are related to each of the modes. So we'll start with the Ionian mode, which will have all of the intervals that are related to the Ionian, and then we'll move maybe to the Dorian, right? And then we'll say, let's look at everything related to the Dorian and look at all the intervals that are related to the Dorian. So that's going to be the general idea. Now, the other thing that I would like to do is not just to find the closest interval. I also want to find, every interval that's on each of these strings, basically. And if I can do that somewhere in from the middle of the guitar, I can take that same concept and move it anywhere because the shapes are movable, right? So that's what I want to do that. And then there's one other thing that I want to keep in mind, and that is that when I look at chord constructions, we skip every other note. So that means when I get to like the ninth up here, that's equivalent to the second for the most part. We can think about octaves and whatnot, but I'm not going to get into that right now. So I also want to be thinking, well, if I look at this interval, which is the second, it's equivalent to the ninth. So we'll try to pick that up as well as we go through our practice worksheet. And the objective is going to be, I'll start with the 0 interval. So we'll look at the octaves, and we'll look at it on each string. So on each string, each interval from this position, from 12 frets, 0 to 12, there's only going to be one note for each of the intervals. So if I'm looking for the octave here, I can see the octave is right there. There's not going to be another one because all 12 notes are basically within frets 0 through 12, and then it repeats. So given that, I should be able on each note to be able to find each of the intervals which I can finger. I can actually reach almost, at least, meaning what's the maximum distance that a note could be from if I'm using this as what's the maximum distance on any of the strings that the octave, for example, could be, or any other interval. Well, it's got to be within 6 frets. Why does it have to be in 6 frets? Well, if I can go in each direction on the guitar, there's only 12 notes, right? So that means that half of 12 is 6. So so if I can go either way, each of these intervals has to be within 6 frets. So that means I should be able to find each of the intervals on each string, and I should be able to find them that are within reaching distance barely. 6 frets is kind of outside. 5 is about as far as most people can go unless you have giant hands or a small guitar, but basically it's within reach, right? So that's going to be the objective. And if we can find the interval on each string, boom, here's the interval, and then we can go to the second and find here's the E on each string. That will allow us to then move that. And if I moved this to something else, I can find all of the related shapes will be the same. Now, when I look at the related shapes, note that I can say, look, this interval is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets back. It's always going to be that way, except when I go across these 2 strings, because that's what I call the fault line. And there was a shift, there's a tectonic shift that moved these up. So that means that I have to consider that when I look at my shapes. I got to say, these are the shapes that are the normal shapes, and then here's the exception. If the shape goes over the fault line, then that interval shape is going to be different. Now, the other thing that's confusing with the intervals, it's not with the octave, but other intervals, is that I can look at the interval going top to bottom, and I can also go the other way, which would be the inverse. So when I look at the intervals, I also want to be considering the inverse intervals, which we'll get into more issues with when I look, say, down here, and I try to look at the intervals up above it, because I have to count the distance. Now, so that's part of our exercise that we'll get to as well. This exercise will practice the inverse interval, and so that's going to be part of our process, and that's going to be the general outline here. Now, the other thing I would like to do, however, is to be able to count the distance. So I want to be able to count the distance, and that'll allow me, if I had enough time, to figure out any interval. If I had the time to count it, I can count it. So I want to be able to count it. I want to be able to see it in terms of shape as well, and I want to know the inverse intervals. And as I do that, I want to practice that within my shape so I can reinforce, this particular shape, so I can play in key and play within that shape, as well as reinforce what the intervals are within a particular scale as we go through all of the modes, in this case, C major and related modes. All right, that's the exercise. So let's start with the octaves here. So I'm on the C, and so I'm going to go through each string up and find the octaves. So, and by the way, the color coding I have right here is related to the C major. So you can see I have the 1, 3, 5. Those are possibly our most important intervals with relation to the C, because that makes our C major chord. So I'll keep that color coding, and then all of the other colors are within the scale of the C major and related modes. All right, so if I'm on the C, that's going to be for my normal shape of pentatonic or like this. That's my pinky normally goes there, right? So there's that C. I can see the C there. If I'm on that C and I go down one string, where's going to be the C on the string down? I could see it right here, and I'd like to use the crutch of my worksheet here, but then get good enough where I don't need the crutch of the worksheet. So let's count that out and say, okay, how does that work? Let's move this one here. So how does that work? Well, we've got, let's actually, I'm gonna cut. Oh man, let's say cut and paste. All right, so that means if I count this out, notice there's a distance between these two notes of five notes. And that's because that's how they tuned the guitar. So anytime I go down one, that's going to be 5. And then if I go from top to bottom and I go back, I can count in half steps, right? So if I say, okay, this, if I count it out, I got to go 12. There's only 12 notes. That's where the next octave is going to be 5. But if I go backwards, it goes down. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then back to 0 or 12, right? So that's the octave. So if I count that out this way, we're going to say, all right, how would I get to the octave? It's going to be 5 down one string, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So boom. It's kind of a stretch. Those are the same note. It's even the same, it's the exact same note, right? Or supposedly. There's going to be different tones. So you don't want, if you played the same chord, here, like it's going to sound different, but, that's the idea. So there's that one. And so, okay, well, what if I went 2 strings down? If I go 2 strings down, boom, boom, from that C, where's the octave? Well, I could see it right there. It's kind of cheating, right? But if I count it out, we're going to say, okay, that's going to be 5, 10. So I went down one string. That's going to be 5 notes down, 10 notes down. I'm looking to get 12. So 1, 2, or there's 12. So 10, 11, 12. So if I counted it out, if I had the time to count it out, I'd go 5, 10, 11, 12. So there's the octave. And then I want to learn that shape, right? That shape is going to be the octave. I want to always be able to see that shape. I'd like to count it up and then see the shape. And then we're going to say, all right, well, let's go to the next one down. Where's the octave going to be? If I go 3 strings down, I haven't yet crossed the fault line. So it's going to be, if I count it out, I'd say, okay, well, that's 5, 10, 15. So 15. And then if I go backwards, that's going to be 14, 13, 12. So there's the octave there. So if I count it up this way, I'm here 5, 10, 15, and then 14, 13, 12. So there's the octave. And I might want to look at it in intervals. So I was repeating in my mind now, there's the shape. So when the rule is then, if I go 3 strings down, 1, 2, 3, then how many frets back is it going to be? It's going to be 1, 2, 3 frets back. So anytime I go 3 frets down, the octave is going to be 3 frets back, right? And I'm going to try to use back versus forward, going backwards and forwards, and then up and then down. Now, those directionality names are going to get all messy when people start talking about pitch going higher and lower, and so on and so forth. But I'm looking pure directionality from my perspective from behind the guitar. And by the way, this is what I think confuses a lot of people, because people use different terms to mean different things. Like I'm using directionality of pitch is going up versus I'm going down on the guitar and so on. And I'm looking at an interval from the perspective of this note, or am I looking at from the, it's just all about perspective, and then the terminology that's really gets quite confusing, I believe, right? Now notice that that will not be 3 frets back if I crossed the fault line, right? So if this whole shape moved down to the F here, it's going to be different because we crossed the fault line. So it's not going to move exactly the same way. But if I don't cross the fault line and I go down 3 strings, the octave will be 1, 2, 3 frets back, which I can prove by counting because the octave is 12 frets away. All right, and so then I'm going to say, all right, well, 12 notes away, pardon me. So now let's go down 4. So now I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. What about on this string? I can see it over here. It's going to be the green note. Now, notice that you can't go down 4, you can't go down 4 notes down on the guitar, directionally 4 notes, without crossing the fault line. So if I have the ability to go down 4 strings, I keep on using them, not 4 notes. If I have the ability to go down 4 strings, by definition, I must have crossed the fault line, which is between these 2 strings. So therefore, that distance is always going to be, the same. So what's the distance going to be? It's going to be 5, 10, 15. And then when I cross the fault line, now this 15, if I'm at 15 right there, there's only 12 notes. So I could bring that down. I could say, well, 15 minus 12 is 3, right? So I could bring it down to 3. And then if I go up here, I can't go down to here because that would be, there's a shift. The shift is up here. So this whole tectonic plate moved up. So I have to go 5, 10, 15, which I can bring down to 3. 15 minus 12 is 3. Plus 5 would be 8 up to here because of the tectonic shift. So that would be 8. And then I can go back 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Now that's pretty far back because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 frets back. It's less of a distance to go up here, but that's crossing the nut, right? Because we're up here. So it's actually, if it's 7 frets back, you'll also find another C, which is going to be 5 frets forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets forward. So if I count it this way, it's going to be 5, 10, 15, which I could bring down to 3. 15 minus 12 is 3. And then up directionally this way, which would be another 5 notes because of the fault line on the guitar, would bring me to 5 plus 3 is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Right there. So there's the octave. So that means that if I go down, whenever I go down 4 strings, I will automatically always go across the fault line, and therefore I can find an octave which will always be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets up, or 7 frets back going this way, which is going to be the inverse of it. All right, so then let's go down to 5 strings down. Now obviously if I go 5 strings down, then that's going to go the whole breadth of the guitar, the full distance of the guitar. And we know that these 2 strings are both tuned to the same note, to E. Therefore, if there's a C here, it's going to be a C here. But I can also count that out and say that's going to be the octave. Why? Because if I count it out, I'm trying to get my pick and my pinky here. We're going to say this is going to be 5, 10, 15. And then if I go up on the fault line, I could bring that down to 3, right? That goes back down to 3. And then I go up the fault line here. 3 plus 5 is 8. And then 8 plus another 10. There's no fault line between these two. So plus 5 is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Minus 1 gets us back here. So we know that that's going to be from here to here. Oh. But that we probably just simply know that because the top string and the bottom string are going to be tuned to the same note. So if I know what the top string is, we know what the bottom string is. Okay, let's try the next one and say, well, let's go to the second. So a lot of people know the octave, but the second often is going to be more of a problem that we don't know all the way across all of the strings oftentimes. Now, when we look at the second, when we build our chords, we usually build the chords by skipping every other note. And therefore we skip the second, and then when we get past the 7th, we then say it's going to be a 9, right? So then we get to the 9. So you could argue that a 9 is different than the second because the 9 should be an octave higher than the second, and so on. But from a guitar standpoint, we typically are going to be thinking of anything. I'm not going to be thinking about octaves. I'm thinking of it as a circle, right? So for right now, I'm thinking that anytime I see a D, I'm going to call that a distance of a major second. So we'll call that a major second distance, which if you're thinking in terms of chord construction, I would call it the 9th of a chord as we skip every other note. And then again, you could keep in your mind that some people are going to get more technical by saying, well, it depends on the octave, but we're thinking kind of in a loop now. Now, also remember, when I'm in the key of C major, these are going to be the intervals. So we have a perfect first and we have a major second. So that's just the name convention. A perfect first is the same note in the octaves. And then a major second, notice when I say it's a major second, that second is representing the second position in the in the scale. That's what that number 2 means. But most people don't iterate or list or name the actual distance, and the actual distance is 2 notes away. And so I'm going to name it every time that it's 2 notes away because I want to be able to count to find all of them. So for example, if I go to the next one up here, this is a major third. So a major third, that means that it's the third relative position to the major scale, in this case in a C major, but it's actually 4 notes away. So I'm going to call it a 4 note away major third because it's important on the guitar to try to reiterate the distance in notes. It's easier on a piano to see that distance because the piano is linear, but on a guitar we lose it. We're like, I don't even know how far, like if I'm trying to go between this note and this note, I don't know how far that is. Like from here to here, people probably don't even most of the time know how many notes distance that is unless they count it up on their fingers, you know, from C to E, because it's not linear. So we lose that. Like this is a perfect fourth. A perfect fourth means that it's the fourth of the scale, but it's actually 5 notes away if you want to count up to it. A perfect fifth is 7 notes away, and so on. So we want to reiterate that. So a major second is going to be, I call it a 2 note away major second, which is equivalent with chord construction to a 2 note away 9th. Okay, so we're looking for, in essence, the E. So if I went on the same string, we're looking for a D, not an E. That would be the third. So if I'm on the same string, I can go 2 notes away, which would be 1, 2. So if I'm on this C, it's going to be right there. That's what it sounds like. 2 notes away, major second. And then if I go down 1 string, where's the 2 note away major second going to be? It's going to be, if I go down 1 string, that'll be 5. And then if I go, and then I'm looking to go down to 2. So that's going to be going left, 5, 4, 3, 2. So where's the 2 note away major second? Well, if I start here and I go down 1 string, the 2 note away major second is always going to be 1, 2, 3 frets back, right? So if I count it up here, it's going to be 5, 4, 3, 2. So there it is. So 2 note away major second, 2 note away major second. So a 2 note away major second is always going to be, if I go down 1 string, the 2 note away major second will be 3 frets back. And I recommend trying to actually say that verbally in our mind as we go through the exercise. That's what I typically do, right? If it's on the same string, it's going to be 2 notes away, 2 note away major second, which is equivalent to a 2 note away 9th, right? And if I go down 1 string, the 2 note away major second is going to be 3 frets back. And that'll always be the same if I moved it to here. The 2 note away major second from that note is here, except when I go across the fault line. So of course, if I was going to here, it's not going to be the same because now I'm crossing the fault line. I have to go with that exception, which we'll talk about later. All right, let's go to the next one and say, let's go to the next string down. If I go down to the next string, 2 strings down, the 2 note away major second I can see is there. and that's actually on the repeated point. So if I go down 2 strings, where's the 2-note away major second? It's going to be 5, 10. So now I'm at 10. So I can go either way. If I go up, I'm going to go 11, 12. Now there's only 12 notes. So therefore I can say that is going back down to like 0. That's the root again. And then 1, 2. So 2-note away major second. If I count that here, it's going to be 5, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2. So there's the D right there. So there it is. So 2-note away major second here, 2-note away major second here. And then and so that means the 2-note away major second is 1, 2, 3, 4 frets up. So if I go down 2 strings, the 2-note away major second is 1, 2, 3, 4 frets up, which will always be the case unless I'm going across the fault line. All right, let's go down another string. If I go down 3 strings, where's the 2-note away major second? I could see it right there. I'm looking for that D. So if I count that out, we say, okay, 2-note away major second would be 5, 10, and then 15. Now that 15, there's only 12 notes, so I can say 15 minus 12 brings me down to 3, and 3 minus 1 is 2. So we're right there. So that means that if I go down 1, 2, 3 strings, the 2-note away major second will always be 1 fret back, unless I'm going across the fault line. So if I count it this way, 5, 10, so I go 5, 10, 15, down to 3, back 1 goes to 2, so there's the 2-note away major second. Whoop. 2-note away major second, so 2-note away major second, 2-note away major second. Okay. So let's say I go down 4 strings, which means by definition I'm going to go across the fault line, and I can see it right there. Let's count it out. So it would be 5, 10, 15, and then the fault line goes up here. So I could bring that 15 down to 3, then I go up here as another 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then I can go back 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, right? I could count it up this way. So I'm going to go 5, 10, 15 down to 3, plus another 5 goes up the fault line this way. It gives me to 8, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. So if I'm way up here, so how many frets back is that? That's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets back, right? So that's about as far as you can reach most people, right? 5 frets. 6 frets is a little bit of a out of reach unless you're on 1 string distance away, right? 1 string higher or lower. So that means that if I go down 4 strings, by definition, I have to go across the fault line, right? And so, and therefore I don't have to say that. If I go down 4 strings, I always know that the major second is going to be 5 frets back. All right, and then if I go down 5 strings, it's going to be repetitive. If I can find it on the top string, I can find it down below. It's right there, so that means it's going to be, because this top string and the bottom string are the same. So I could see it right there, but I could count it up if I wanted to. It's going to be 5, 10, 15, and then going up the fault, and bring that down to 3, and then 3 plus 5 is 8. And then 8, 9, 10, plus 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And then you bring it down. So 13 minus 12 is 1, plus 1 is 2, right? But we'll probably find that one by just saying, hey, look, I could find it up here. And therefore, the same is going to be the octave down here on this string. All right, and then once you have thought it out, you probably want to then play them together, maybe like 2 strings at a time to get the shape. And then so there's that one, and then boom. And maybe even say it in my mind. I'm like, okay, so that we have on the same string, the 2-note away major second is 2 frets forward. If I go down 1 string, the 2-note away major second is 3 frets back. If I go down 2 strings, the 2-note away major 7 is 1 1, 2, 3, 4 frets up, and maybe we can actually list all of them out here. I could say there's that one, copy, and then paste. There's that one, and then paste, and then there's that one, and then paste, and then there's that one. So I can say, okay, so boom, 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 and then if I go down 3 strings, the 2 note away major second is 1 fret back, and if I go down 4 strings, the 2 note away major second is, what was that, 5 frets back, and then if I go down the 5 strings, the 2 note away major second is 2 frets forward. All right, we can go and we can keep on trying to reiterate that in a shape format. Okay, and so let's try to do the next one. And so let's say now we're gonna go, let's say we go to, let's try to do at least one more. So if I go to the 3rd, notice it's the 3rd in the scale, which means that it's also gonna be the 3rd of our chord shape because we skip every other shape. So the 3rd has the same naming convention in our chord as it does in the scale because it's one of the odd ones and we skip every other note. So that's going to be, so now notice if I'm in the major mode, major modes being Ionian, Lydian, Mixolydian, the 3rd is going to be the defining characteristics between a major and minor mode and scale, and therefore this one it must be a major 3rd, so because we're in the major C major scale, and the major 3rd is 4 notes away. So it's a 4, I'm going to call it a 4 note away major 3rd that we're looking for. Now this one is one of the big ones. We want to know all of the major 3rds because that's part of our triad that we build everything off of typically in Western music. So I want to know that one really well, right? So if I'm on the same string, I could say, okay, the major 3rd, it's 4 notes away. So I could go up 4 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's the major 3rd. Now it's a little bit more of a stretch than the minor 3rd. It's usually kind of outside the shape a little bit, but there's going to be our major 3rd. If I go down 1 string, then where's the major 3rd? I could see it's right there. There's the E. If I count that out, it's going to be 5 and then 4, right? Because down 1 would be 5 and 4. So if I count it out, it's going to be 5 and then 4. So that shape, I want to know that shape really well. So I can do either of those. If I go down 2, so if I go down 1 string, the 4 note away major 3rd will be 1 fret back always, unless I'm crossing the fault line, in which case it'll be right underneath, which we'll talk more about later when we get there. If I go down 2 strings, where's the major 3rd? Well, it's way back here, so that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's the maximum distance. So it's going to be 6 back and 6 forward. So if I count that out, it's going to be 5, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Right? So if I count that out here, it's going to be 5, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. So way over there. Can't really reach that. So that's the one that's kind of out of reach because we can really reach generally 5 frets. So if I go down 2 strings, the 4 note away major 3rd is 6 frets back, which means it's always also 6 frets forward, which I can't quite see because that's going across this repeat point. So I'm trying to, for the most part, stay before this line, although you could go over that depending on how much space you got on the guitar. But then we're going to go down 3 frets, or 3 strings, so that's going to be 5, 10, 15, and then so 15 minus 12 gets us down to 3, and then up 1 would be 4. So if I go down 3 strings, it's going to be 5, 10, 15, down to minus 12 is 3, and then 4. So if I go down three strings, the 3-note away minor third is always going to be 1 fret forward unless I cross the fault line. Now that of course is quite useful to know because that's going to be part of our bar chord construction, typically this way or this way. And so then if I go down 4 strings, then I'm always by definition going to cross the fault line. So 5, 10, 15 down to 3. 15 minus 12 is 3. Crossing the fault line going this way would be another 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, right? So I can count it out here. So it'd be 5, 10, 15 down to 3 plus 5 would be 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. So now we have this E right there. So if I go down 1, 2, 4 strings, by definition I'm crossing the fault line, so I don't really have to say that because I'm always going to do that if I go down 4 strings. It'll always be the 4-note away major third will always be 3 frets back. And then if I go down 5, then again you're probably just going to count the top one and say, well, if I can find it right there, instead of counting it out, I'm going to say, well, if it's there, it's also going to be here. Same note on top and bottom, which you could count out. I won't count it out now because we're running kind of long on time. So, and then of course we might want to, list all of them out, right? So, and try to say, okay, I want to see if I can find them shape-wise a little bit more rapidly. And this is one of the ones, we probably want to work on a little bit more. So we probably know this one. You want to know that one really well, right? And I want to know this one really well. So if I go down 1 string, it's 1 fret back. This one's probably not the one I'm gonna be using all the time. I'm missing paste because that's gonna be a reach to get back here. So if I go down 2, it's gonna be up here, and then if I go down 3, whoops, I'm on the wrong. That one I'm gonna be using all the time, so we might not know that by kind of memory, but it's a useful one to have. And then we're gonna go, and then, so that's gonna be our thirds. So that's the exercise I'm trying to drill down in my own mind more often to get an idea. So next time we'll continue on with the F, the G, the A, and the B, and look at all those intervals in a similar way. And then once we do everything for the key of C, we'll move it on over to the key of D, which I'm not going to say D major. We're then going to be looking at D Dorian, and that'll give us different intervals because now we'll be looking at a minor mode, even though it's in the same shape. So we'll get to really learn the same shape pattern here, but look at it from a different tonic and think about the minor intervals and look at everything from the perspective of the D, which is going to give us, different intervals. And we'll also get to look at the strings above, which means that how do I count out what the interval is when there's a string above? I'm going to have to look at the inverse, right? And so we'll look at that relationship. If we get these relationships down, that really helps us to think about more kind of weird chords, because really, if you have 3 notes in a chord, you can name the chord at least 3 different things because you can look at it from the perspective of each of those notes as the tonic or root of the chord. And so what we really want to do, the more dexterous we are in our mind to see things from the different perspective of the intervals, the more ability we'll have to do different things. We'll be able to think from different angles, which that really, I think, makes it so you can be a lot more creative if you can think of the same thing from a different angle. You'll start to approach it differently. So I think that's what we'll practice.